I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was Claire, my only daughter. Her voice sounded strange, almost cold, as she said, "Mom, listen. Vincent and I are leaving for Europe tomorrow. We sold the shore house and the car. We needed the cash. Bye." And she hung up. Just like that. 45 years of raising her, of sacrificing for her, and she discards me like a piece of trash. But I took a deep breath and smiled, because there was something my dear daughter didn't know. My name is Eleanor. I'm 71 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew my daughter. I had been widowed for just 6 months. Arthur, my husband, died of a heart attack while we were having breakfast together, just as we had every morning for 45 years. That morning, he'd served me coffee and toast, just like always. He had kissed my forehead and said, "Good morning, my love." Those were his last words. Since then, Claire had been more present in my life. Or so I thought. She would visit 3 times a week, help me with the funeral arrangements, and join me for grocery runs. She even suggested I see a doctor for a full checkup. "Mom, you need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," she'd say with a smile I thought was born of love, but now I understand was one of convenience. The shore house had been our refuge for years. Arthur and I bought it when Claire was 15, with so much hard work and sacrifice. Every summer we went there. We built memories, celebrated birthdays, Christmases. Claire brought her boyfriends, and later Vincent, her husband. I would cook for everyone, clean, do the laundry. It was our family tradition. I never thought she'd see it as just an asset to be liquidated. And the car, that old Ford station wagon that Arthur cared for like it was his own child. He washed it every Sunday, changed the oil religiously, and always parked it on the same corner under the shade of the big oak tree. Claire knew what that car meant to me. It was the last piece of him I had left. His scent was still in the upholstery. When she hung up, I just sat there in that uncomfortable green plastic chair surrounded by other sick people. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something strange happened inside me, a calm I hadn't felt since Arthur's death. Because in that moment, I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 3 days before he died, Arthur had handed me a manila envelope. "Eleanor, keep this in your dresser drawer. If anything happens to me, open it after a while, but only when you feel ready." I put it away without much thought. After the funeral, with all the pain and paperwork, I simply forgot about it. But it was there, waiting for me at home. The nurse called my name. The doctor examined me, told me I was in good shape for my age, that I just needed to rest more and eat better. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about that envelope, about the coldness in Claire's voice, about how Vincent was probably behind all of this. He had never liked me, always seeing me as a burden. I left the clinic and walked slowly to the bus stop. I didn't have a car anymore, according to Claire. But as I waited, I couldn't help but smile. There was something poetic about it all. My daughter thought she had left me with nothing, but what she didn't know was that Arthur, my dear Arthur, was always a man who planned ahead. The bus arrived, and I sat by the window. I watched the city go by, the houses, the stores, the people rushing from one place to another, all with their own tragedies, their own secrets. I had mine too, and I was about to uncover them. When I got home, I went straight up to my bedroom. I opened the dresser drawer, and there it was, the manila envelope, exactly where I had left it. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. I could feel several documents inside. Arthur had written my name on the front in his careful script. I sat on the bed we had shared for so many years and took a deep breath. It was starting to get dark outside, and the house was filling with those familiar shadows that no longer scared me. I opened the envelope slowly, as if unwrapping a birthday present. What I found inside would change everything. It left me breathless. There were legal documents, deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Arthur. My eyes filled with tears as I read his familiar handwriting. My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I wanted to protect you from worry. Over the years, I invested our savings in properties and businesses. We don't just own the shore house, we own 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Claire and Vincent live. We also have stocks in 3 companies worth more than you can imagine. You are a wealthy woman, my love. You always were rich in spirit, but now you are on paper too. My hands shook as I reviewed the documents. There were deeds to houses in different neighborhoods, a condo downtown, a small motel on the coast, and sure enough, the 20-story building where my daughter lived. Arthur had been the silent owner for the last 10 years, but he had put everything in the name of a holding company I knew nothing about. And according to the paperwork, I was the sole heir to that company. There were also statements from bank accounts I never knew existed, numbers that seemed unreal. Arthur had been a bus driver for 40 years, but apparently, he had also been a brilliant investor. Every dollar we saved, every sacrifice we made, he had multiplied in silence, and I never knew a thing. In the letter, Arthur explained he'd kept it all a secret because he didn't want me to worry about money, nor did he want Claire to know about our true financial situation. You know our daughter, Eleanor. If she knew we had this much money, her attitude might change. I want her to love us for who we are, not for what we have. The irony was crushing. Our daughter had abandoned us thinking we had nothing, when in reality, we had everything. I couldn't sleep that night. I walked through the house, touching the old furniture, the knickknacks Claire had always criticized as being outdated. I looked at the family photos on the wall, especially one where she was 5 years old, sitting on Arthur's lap, laughing. Where did that sweet girl go? When did she become so cold, so calculating? The next morning, the phone rang early. It was Claire again. Her voice sounded different, softer, but I had already learned to distrust those shifts in tone. Mom, how are you? I wanted to let you know we've transferred the money from the house and the car. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it'll help you live for a few months while you find a smaller place. My share? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Yes, Mom. Obviously, we weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. That's fair, right? We need the money for this investment in Europe. Vincent has an incredible business opportunity over there. 30% of my own property. How generous. I understand. So, when are you leaving? This afternoon. Our bags are packed. We'll be gone for at least 6 months, maybe longer if the business works out. But don't worry, Mom. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment, something that fits your needs. Fits my needs, as if she had any idea what my needs were. All right, Claire, have a good trip. Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so supportive. We love you so much. And she hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, and for the first time in months, I laughed. I laughed like I hadn't since Arthur died. The situation was so absurd it was comical. My daughter had robbed me, kicked me out of my own home, spoken to me with unbearable condescension, all to finance a European fantasy that would probably end in disaster. But what bothered me most wasn't the money. It was the ease with which she had discarded me. 45 years of my life dedicated to her, of sacrifice, of unconditional love, and she had erased me from her life with a 2-minute phone call. That's what hurt. I checked my bank account online. Sure enough, they had deposited a sum that probably seemed generous to them, but to me, it was a joke. They had sold the shore house for far less than it was worth, likely because they needed the cash fast. And Arthur's car, they had practically given it away. That afternoon, from my window, I watched Claire and Vincent load suitcases into a cab. He was hauling 2 enormous bags. She carried a designer travel bag that looked very expensive. I saw them laugh, kiss, make plans. They looked like two teenagers excited for an adventure. They never looked up at my window. They never said goodbye. When the cab drove away, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and Arthur's documents spread across the table. I had decisions to make. I could call a lawyer, reclaim my properties, and take back everything they had stolen. But something told me there was a better way to handle this, a more educational way. I called Gregory, the lawyer who had handled Arthur's affairs. He had been at the funeral. He'd offered his condolences and told me not to hesitate to call if I needed anything. Well, now I needed him. Eleanor, how wonderful to hear from you. How are you holding up? I'm well, Gregory. I need to see you urgently. I found some of Arthur's papers that I don't quite understand. Of course. Can you come by my office tomorrow morning? I'll be there. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. I dreamed of Arthur. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, reading the newspaper as he did every morning. And when he saw me, he smiled and said, "It's about time, my love. It's about time you stood up for yourself." I woke with a strange feeling. It wasn't exactly happiness, but it wasn't the grief that had blanketed me for months either. It was something like determination. For the first time since Arthur's death, I had a clear purpose. I was going to get back what was mine, but not in the way Clare expected. The next morning, I got ready with more care than usual. I put on my burgundy dress, the one Arthur always said made me look elegant. I did my hair, put on a little makeup, and when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in a long time. I saw a strong woman. Gregory's office was downtown. It was an old but elegant building with marble floors and large windows. He greeted me with a warm smile. But when I showed him the documents, his expression changed completely. Eleanor, this is far more than I ever imagined. Arthur was a very smart man. Look, according to these papers, you are the owner of... I know, Gregory. I've reviewed them. What I need to know is what I can do legally. Gregory explained that everything was in order, the documents were legitimate, and I was the legal owner of all those properties. He also confirmed something I already suspected. The sale of the shore house had been illegal because Clare had no right to sell it. We can recover the house immediately, Eleanor, and we can also press charges against your daughter for fraud. No, Gregory, I don't want to press charges. I want to do this another way. I want everything to remain a secret for now. Can you help me? Gregory looked at me with curiosity but nodded. Of course. You're my client. What do you need? I need you to discreetly recover the shore house. Do whatever is necessary to nullify that fraudulent sale. And I need you to help me take real control of all my properties, especially the building where my daughter lives. I understand. It will be a process that takes a few weeks, but it's completely feasible. Perfect. And Gregory, I need no one to know I'm behind this, at least for now. When I left Gregory's office, I felt as if I had woken from a very long dream. I walked through the downtown streets, watching the people, the buildings, the life that continued on its normal course. But for me, everything had changed. I had a plan. The following weeks were the strangest of my life. Officially, I was a poor widow abandoned by her daughter, but secretly, I was a wealthy woman quietly orchestrating the recovery of her estate. Gregory worked efficiently, calling me every few days with updates on the legal progress. I decided to stay in my house for the time being. It was mine, after all, though Clare probably expected me to move into a cheap boarding room. Every morning, I would wake up, have breakfast at the same table where Arthur and I had shared so many years, and then go for a walk around the neighborhood. The neighbors greeted me with that mix of pity and curiosity reserved for the recently widowed. Carol, my lifelong neighbor, approached me one afternoon as I was watering the front plants. Eleanor, dear, is it true that Clare went to Europe and left you all alone? Yes, Carol. She went with Vincent. They have business plans over there. And how are you going to manage, honey? We all know Arthur didn't leave much behind. If only you knew, I thought. Don't you worry about me, Carol. I'll be just fine. Do you need anything? I can bring you some food, help with your shopping. You're very kind, but I'm okay, really. Carol gave me a look I knew well. It was the same look I'd received after the funeral, pity mixed with a little relief that it wasn't her tragedy. Well, you know where to find me if you need anything. These conversations happened constantly. The butcher, the baker, the lady at the corner store, they all spoke to me in that soft tone used for the unfortunate. And I would nod, smile, and thank them for their concern. But inside, a part of me was enjoying this performance. It was like living a double life. Gregory called me on a Wednesday morning. Eleanor, I have good news. I managed to nullify the sale of the shore house. The buyers were unaware the sale was fraudulent, so they got their money back without any trouble. The house is yours again. Excellent. Gregory, what about the building where Clare lives? That's more complicated. Technically, you've always been the owner through the holding company, but we need to make some administrative changes for you to have direct control. It should take another 2 weeks. Perfect. Keep me informed. After I hung up, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee and thought about Clare. She had been in Europe for 3 weeks, and I hadn't heard a word from her. Not a call, not a text, not even a postcard. To her, I had ceased to exist the moment she got the money she needed. But I knew that was about to change. I decided to visit the shore house. I took the bus to the coast, the same road Arthur and I had taken hundreds of times. The house was exactly as I remembered it, small, painted cream, with a deck overlooking the ocean. The recent occupants had placed a few potted plants, but other than that, everything was the same. I sat on the curb across the street and just looked at it for an hour. I remembered the summer afternoons when Clare was little, running on the beach, building sandcastles, Arthur grilling fish while I made salads in the kitchen, Clare bringing friends, then boyfriends, then Vincent. All those happy moments she had reduced to a simple business transaction. An older man came out of the house and saw me sitting there. He approached me curiously. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you. I was just reminiscing. I knew the former owners." "Oh, yes. We knew them very well." "What a shame what happened. They told us the elderly woman was very sick and needed to sell quickly. We thought it was a steal, but now it turns out the sale wasn't legal. We had to give the house back." "Did you meet them in person?" "No, we did everything through intermediaries. But they told us the daughter was handling everything because the mother couldn't. Such a sad situation." If only you knew how sad it really was, I thought. "Well, I'm glad you didn't lose your money." "Yes, luckily it all worked out. Though now we have to find another house. We really like this one." I left there with a heavy heart. It wasn't just the money that hurt. It was the ease with which Clare had lied about me, invented a story about my illness, and used my supposed vulnerability to justify her actions. To her, I wasn't a person with feelings, but an obstacle to be removed. That night, I called Gregory again. "Gregory, I need your help with something else. I want to get Arthur's car back too." "That will be more difficult, Eleanor. The car was in your name, but your daughter had a power of attorney that allowed her to sell it." "How is that possible?" "Apparently you signed it a few months ago, after your husband's death. You don't remember?" There it was, the moment Clare had started planning all of this. I vaguely remembered signing some papers she had brought me, telling me they were to facilitate the funeral and estate paperwork. I was so lost in grief that I signed without reading. How naive I had been. "I see. Gregory, is there any way to get it back?" "We can try, but it will be more complicated. We would need to prove you signed that power of attorney under deceit or duress." "Let's do it. I want everything they took from me back." Over the next few weeks, I developed a strange routine. In the mornings, I was the poor widow everyone knew. I went out for groceries, talked to the neighbors, and kept up appearances. But in the afternoons, I became a businesswoman. I studied Arthur's documents, talked with Gregory, and planned my next move. I learned things about finance I never thought I'd need to know. I discovered that Arthur had been much smarter than I ever imagined. Each of his investments had been carefully calculated. The building where Claire lived, for example, wasn't just profitable because of the rent. It was in an area that was rapidly appreciating in value. I also discovered that Vincent, Claire's husband, had debts. A lot of debts. He had taken out loans using their apartment as collateral, not knowing he wasn't the real owner. When the banks found out, he was going to be in serious trouble. Gregory called on a Friday with important news. "Eleanor, we've finalized all the paperwork. You now have full control of all your properties." I also recovered Arthur's car. The buyer happened to be an acquaintance of mine, and when I explained the situation, he agreed to return it for a small compensation. "Excellent work. Gregory, now I need you to help me with one more thing. I want you to send a letter to my daughter." "What kind of letter?" "An eviction notice." There was a silence on the other end of the line. "Eleanor, are you sure you want to do this?" "Completely sure. She decided I wasn't important in her life. Now she's going to find out just how important I really am." "I understand. Do you want me to send it to Europe?" "No. I want you to have it delivered when she gets back. I have a feeling that will be very soon." I wasn't wrong. That very afternoon, Carol came running to my house with fresh neighborhood gossip. "Eleanor, did you hear Vincent is in trouble with the bank? My brother-in-law who works there told me they're investigating some loans he took out using their apartment as collateral. But it turns out the apartment isn't his." "Is that so?" "Yes, and it seems Claire knew nothing about it. They're saying she's going to have to come back from Europe to sort out this mess. What a complicated situation." "Yes, and the worst part is, apparently Vincent lied to her about the business in Europe. There was no business. He just wanted to escape the debts he had here." Perfect. Everything was falling into place exactly as I had hoped. Claire had trusted Vincent, had sacrificed her relationship with me for him, and now she was discovering he wasn't the man she thought he was. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and looked at the stars. Arthur used to say the stars were the souls of people who had lived full lives, watching over their families from the heavens. If that was true, then he was up there, watching his plan unfold perfectly. "Thank you, my love," I said to the sky. "Thank you for taking care of me even after you're gone." The next day, Gregory called early. "Eleanor, we have an update. Your daughter just arrived back in the country. She's at the airport, alone." "Yes, apparently Vincent stayed in Europe. Rumor has it they had a huge fight." "I see. Have you sent the letter?" "I'm sending it out today. She should receive it tomorrow." I hung up the phone and stood there in the kitchen, feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation. After so many weeks of silent planning, the time for the first real move had finally arrived. Claire was about to find out that her mother was not the helpless victim she believed her to be. Claire got to her apartment on Tuesday night. I knew because Carol, who seemed to have informants all over the neighborhood, came to tell me the next day. "Eleanor, your daughter came back last night. I saw her go up with one suitcase, but she looked awful, pale dark circles under her eyes, like she'd been crying the whole flight." "Alone?" "Completely alone. And something strange, Eleanor. When the doorman asked for her keys, she didn't have them. She had to have the super let her in with the emergency copy." Interesting. Vincent had the keys, which meant he probably had no intention of returning. Or maybe Claire had discovered something about him and fled. In any case, my daughter was back, and she would soon be receiving my little welcome home gift. Gregory called me that same afternoon. "Eleanor, the letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman confirmed your daughter received it personally." "Perfect. How long did we give her?" 30 days to vacate the apartment. as required by law. But, Eleanor, are you sure about this? She is your daughter after all. Gregory, my daughter kicked me out of my own home with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my belongings without asking. She treated me like trash. Now, she's going to learn that actions have consequences. I understand. I just wanted to make sure you'd considered all the implications. I've considered them all, Gregory. Every single one. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, imagining Claire's face as she read the letter. The initial confusion, then disbelief, then panic. She would probably think it was a mistake, that someone was trying to scam her. But when she called to verify, she would discover it was all completely legal. The next day, as if on cue, the phone rang at 8 in the morning. It was Claire, and her voice was desperate. Mom, I need to talk to you urgently. Good morning, dear. How was Europe? Mom, I don't have time for that right now. I got a really weird letter yesterday. It says I have to be out of my apartment in 30 days. It has to be a mistake, right? Do you know anything about this? An eviction notice? How strange. Who is it from? Some company I've never heard of. It's called... Wait, let me find the letter. Arthur Holdings, LLC. Do you know them? Arthur had used his own name for the company. How poetic. No, dear. I've never heard of them. Are you sure the letter is legitimate? That's what I need to find out. Mom, I need your help. I don't know what to do. Vincent left me in Europe. He ran off with another woman. And now I come back to this. I don't understand what's happening. There was the confirmation. Vincent had abandoned her, probably when the money ran out, or when he realized his legal troubles back home were more serious than he thought. Poor Claire. She had sacrificed her family for a man who was worthless. I'm so sorry to hear that, dear. Where are you now? I'm at the apartment, but I don't know for how long. Mom, can I come see you? I need to talk to someone. I don't have anyone else. The irony was perfect. Now that the man she had abandoned me for was gone, she remembered she had a mother. Of course, dear. Come over whenever you like. I'm on my way now. I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. I had to be perfect for this performance. I put on my most conservative gray dress, pulled my hair back into a simple bun, and practiced my expression of a concerned but resigned mother. When Claire arrived, she would see exactly what she expected to see. A poor, vulnerable widow who had been abandoned by her own daughter. Claire arrived an hour later. When I opened the door, I was shocked at how terrible she looked. She had lost weight, had deep dark circles under her eyes, and her expensive clothes looked wrinkled and slept in. Her eyes were red from crying. Mom, she said, and for a moment, I thought she was going to hug me. But she stopped, as if suddenly remembering how things had ended between us. Come in, dear. Do you want some coffee? Yes, please. We sat in the kitchen, at the same table where I had read Arthur's documents weeks before. Claire looked small in that chair, lost, like when she was a little girl and would come to me with her school problems. Mom, I am so sorry for how I left. I know I didn't treat you well. It's in the past, dear. No, it's not. I treated you horribly. I said terrible things. Her voice broke. And now I have no one. What happened with Vincent? He left me for a 25-year-old waitress at a hotel in Paris. It turns out there was never any business in Europe. It was all a lie. He just wanted to escape his debts here and used the money from selling your house to fund his little adventure. His debts? Yes, Mom, a lot of debts. It seems he'd been taking out loans for years, using our apartment as collateral. But now I find out he wasn't even the owner of the apartment. How is that possible? Here was my opening. I don't know, dear. Property matters are so complicated. The problem is, now the banks are coming after me for his debts. They say since we were married, I'm responsible too. And on top of that, this eviction notice. Mom, I don't know what to do. I have no money, no job, nowhere to live." She started to cry. Real, genuine tears of desperation. And for a moment, my mother's heart softened. I wanted to hold her, comfort her, tell her everything would be okay. But then I remembered the coldness in her voice on that phone call, the ease with which she had dismissed me, the way she had spoken to me as if I were a burden. "Have you spoken to a lawyer about the letter?" "I don't have money for a lawyer, Mom. We spent everything in Europe. Vincent took what little was left when he ran off with that woman." "So what are you going to do?" "I don't know. I was thinking maybe I could stay with you for a little while, just until I find a job and can get a small place of my own." There it was, the question I had been waiting for. After kicking me out of my own home, after selling my things, after treating me like dirt, now she wanted me to rescue her. She wanted the poor widow she had created to save her from the consequences of her own actions. "Of course, dear. This will always be your home." Claire looked at me in surprise, as if she hadn't expected it to be so easy. "Really, Mom? After everything that's happened?" "You're my daughter, Claire. That will never change." She stood up, and this time she did hug me. It was a desperate hug, the kind from someone who is drowning and clinging to the only lifeline they can find. I hugged her back, but not with the unconditional love of before. Now there was calculation in my embrace, a strategy. "Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll find a job soon. I won't be a burden." "Don't worry about that now. Just rest, recover, and then we'll figure out your options." Claire left that afternoon to get a few things from her apartment. I stayed in the kitchen, thinking about how easy it had been. She had come to me exactly as I had planned, broken, desperate, and out of options. And the best part was, she suspected nothing. To her, I was still the poor, abandoned mother in need of her compassion. But this was only the first part of my plan. Having her live with me would give me the perfect opportunity for the next phase. I was going to let her settle in, let her feel safe, let her believe she had found refuge in my home. And then, when she least expected it, I was going to teach her the difference between being poor by choice and being poor by consequence. That night, I called Gregory. "Gregory, I need you to do something else for me." "Name it, Eleanor." "I want you to investigate Vincent's debts. I want to know exactly how much he owes, to whom, and what legal options I have to separate them from my daughter." "That will take some time, but it's feasible." "Perfect. And Gregory, I want you to keep this in absolute secrecy. No one can know I'm behind this investigation." "Of course, Eleanor. May I ask what your ultimate plan is?" "My plan, Gregory, is very simple. I'm going to save my daughter. But first, she has to understand what it truly means to hit rock bottom." When I hung up, I poured myself a glass of the wine Arthur kept for special occasions. It had been a long time since I'd had an occasion as special as this. The game had begun, and for the first time in months, I was holding all the cards. Claire moved into my house the next day. She arrived with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box, all that was left of her former life. I watched her unpack in her old bedroom, the same one she'd slept in as a teenager, and I could see the humiliation in her every move. She had gone from living in a luxury apartment to taking refuge in her childhood room. "Mom, I found this in the apartment," she said, showing me a manila envelope. "It was among Vincent's things. It has your name on it." It was another envelope from Arthur. My heart sped up, but I kept my composure. "My name? How odd." "Yeah, look." She showed it to me. Sure enough, it had my name written in Arthur's hand. But this envelope was different from the one I'd found in my dresser. This one was smaller, newer. "Maybe Vincent found it among Dad's things when he died and forgot to give it to me," Claire said. "It's possible. May I see it?" I opened the envelope in front of her. Inside was a short note and a small key. The note read, "Eleanor, if you are reading this after I have given you the main envelope, it means our daughter is going through a difficult time. This key opens a safe deposit box at the downtown bank branch. The number is 247. There is something in there that can help you help her, but use it wisely. With eternal love, Arthur. Claire read the note over my shoulder. A safe deposit box? Dad had a safe deposit box? I had no idea. I lied. Your father never told me about this. Do you think we should go see what's in it? I don't know, dear. Maybe it's best to leave things as they are. But Mom, maybe there's something important in there. Documents or, I don't know, maybe something of value that could help us. The desperation in her voice was palpable. Claire was clinging to any possibility of finding a way out of her situation, and I was going to let her cling a little longer before showing her the full reality. All right, I said after a calculated pause. We can go tomorrow. That evening, Claire and I had dinner together for the first time in months. She had cooked, trying to be helpful, but the food tasted of guilt and despair. She told me more details about what had happened in Europe, and each story was worse than the last. Vincent lied to me about everything, Mom. Not just the business, but the debts, too. I thought he only owed a little bit of money, but it turns out he owes over $100,000. And the worst part is, he used my name for some of the loans without me knowing. How is that possible? He forged my signature. When I married him, I gave him some documents to handle the bank paperwork for our joint account. I never thought he'd use them for this. Do you have any way to prove you didn't know? I don't know. It's all so complicated. The banks say that since we were married, I'm responsible for all his debts anyway. And the divorce? I don't even know where Vincent is now. He's completely disappeared. His phone is disconnected. He doesn't answer emails, nothing. It's like he vanished into thin air. Perfect. Vincent had fled like the rat he always was, leaving Claire to face the consequences of his actions alone. In a way, he had done me a favor. Now my daughter was experiencing exactly what I had felt when she abandoned me. The betrayal of someone she had trusted completely. I'm so sorry, dear. I didn't know things were this bad. I didn't either, Mom. I thought Vincent loved me, that we were going to build something together. But it turns out, I was just an easy way for him to get money and documents. Claire started to cry again. How could I have been so stupid? How did I not see what he really was? It was tempting to tell her I had seen the signs from the beginning, that I had tried to warn her, that Vincent had never seemed trustworthy to me, but that would have broken my facade of the understanding, vulnerable mother. Love makes us blind sometimes, dear. Don't blame yourself. But Mom, I didn't just ruin my life. I ruined yours too. I treated you horribly. I took your house, your car, your things, and all to give it to a man who abandoned me at the first opportunity. That's in the past, Claire. No, it's not. Now we're both in trouble because of me. You lost everything Dad left you, and I lost my marriage and my future. We're two poor women just trying to survive. If only she knew, I thought. If only she knew that right now I have more money than she could possibly imagine, that I own the building she lived in, that I could solve all her problems with a single phone call. But it wasn't time yet. The next day, we went to the bank. Claire was nervous, hopeful. I maintained my act of the confused widow who didn't understand much about finances. The bank employee led us to the safe deposit boxes, verified my ID, and opened box number 247. Inside were jewels, a lot of jewels, rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. I recognized some pieces as heirlooms from Arthur's family. Others were completely new to me. There was also a letter explaining the origin of each piece and its approximate value. Claire gasped. Mom, this must be worth a fortune. You think so? Yes, look at this emerald and this pearl necklace. Mom, Dad kept a treasure in here. According to Arthur's letter, the jewelry was worth approximately $200,000. It was a significant amount, but it was nothing compared to the rest of my estate. It was like finding loose change under the sofa cushions when you have $1 million in the bank. What do we do with this, Mom? I don't know, dear. They're just family heirlooms. But Mom, we could sell some of the pieces. With this money, you could get your shore house back, and I could pay off some of Vincent's debts. There it was again. Even when she found something valuable, Claire's first thought was how to use it to solve the problems Vincent had created. She hadn't learned a thing yet. Are you sure you want to use your father's inheritance to pay Vincent's debts? What other choice do I have, Mom? If I don't pay something, the banks are going to foreclose on everything I have. And technically, I don't have anything. Everything was in Vincent's name. Think about it carefully, dear. Once you sell these jewels, you won't be able to get them back. I know, but what else can I do? I can't get a job with all these pending legal claims. No employer is going to want to hire someone with so many legal problems. We took the jewelry home. Claire spread it out on the kitchen table and examined each piece, calculating which ones she could sell and which she could keep. It was painful to watch her reduce her father's memories to numbers on a piece of paper. Mom, I think with this we can solve the most urgent problems. Not all of them, but at least the most serious ones. And then what? Then I'll look for a job. I'll try to rebuild my life. Maybe I can find a small room to rent, something cheap. You don't have to leave, dear. You can stay here as long as you need. No, Mom. I've already taken advantage of your kindness too much. Besides, you need money too. You can't support me indefinitely. It was fascinating to see how Claire had built a completely false picture of my financial situation. To her, I was a poor widow who could barely support herself, when in reality, I had enough resources to buy the entire building where we had found the jewelry. That afternoon, Gregory called me. Eleanor, I have the full report on Vincent's debts. The situation is worse than we thought. How much worse? He owes over $200,000 to several banks, and he also has debts with private lenders. What's more concerning is that he did use falsified documents with your daughter's signature for some of these loans. That means Claire is on the hook. Legally, it's complicated. If we can prove she didn't know, we might be able to get her off the hook for some of it. But it will be a long and expensive process. How expensive? For a good lawyer specializing in these types of cases, probably $50,000. And there's no guarantee of success. I see. And if she just pays the debts? If she has the money, that would be the quickest solution. But I doubt she has access to that kind of cash. Gregory, I want you to prepare all the necessary documents to free my daughter from these debts. But don't tell her anything yet. You're going to pay, Eleanor? I'm going to do whatever is necessary to protect my daughter, but this has to be handled in a very specific way. When I hung up, I found Claire in the living room, looking at the jewelry with a sad expression. She looked lost, like a child who had broken her favorite toy and didn't know how to fix it. What are you thinking about, dear? About Dad. About how disappointed he would be in me if he could see what I've done with my life. Your father loved you very much, Claire. He would understand. No, Mom. He taught me to be responsible, to value family, to not be selfish. And I did the exact opposite. I abandoned my mother for a man who turned out to be a liar. I sold my family's memories for cash. I ruined everything he built. For the first time since she had returned, I heard genuine remorse in her voice. It wasn't just regret for the consequences of her actions, but a true recognition that she had done something morally wrong. People make mistakes, dear. The important thing is to learn from them. But how do I learn from this, Mom? How do I fix the damage I've done? There it was, the question I had been waiting for. Claire was finally ready to face the truth about her actions and their consequences. But it still wasn't time to reveal my final card. First, I had to let her hit rock bottom completely. The next few days were crucial to my plan. Claire decided to sell most of the jewelry, keeping only the engagement ring Arthur had given me, and a small necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. I watched her prepare to visit jewelers, research prices, and negotiate with buyers. It was painful to see her reduce decades of family history to commercial transactions, but it was necessary for her to understand the real weight of her decisions. "Mom, I got $180,000 for the jewelry," she told me one afternoon, counting the bills on the kitchen table. "It's less than I hoped for, but it's enough to pay off the most urgent debts. Are you sure you want to do this?" "I have no choice. If I don't pay something soon, they'll start seizing assets. Even this house could be at risk if they prove I have some kind of legal connection to the properties." The irony of the situation was thick. Claire was worried about losing a house that I owned, paying off the debts of a man who had abandoned her, with money from jewelry that had belonged to the very man who had built the fortune that could save her. "And how will you decide which debts to pay first?" I spoke with a free financial advisor at the bank. She told me to prioritize the debts with real collateral, because those are the ones that can affect property or lead to immediate seizures. Claire had matured a lot in these few weeks. The woman who had sold my things without consulting me was now carefully researching every financial decision. The suffering had made her more responsible, but also more fragile. That night, as she was organizing the debt paperwork on the table, I received a call from Gregory. "Eleanor, I have important news. We've located Vincent." "Where is he?" "In Paris, as your daughter suspected. But here's the interesting part. He's trying to get French residency through a sham marriage with that young woman your daughter mentioned." "A sham marriage?" "Yes. Apparently the girl needs papers, and he needs a way to stay in Europe without being deported. But more importantly, we found evidence that he deliberately forged your daughter's documents with the intent to flee the country. So that means Claire can be freed from the debts? With this evidence, yes, we can prove fraud and coercion. Your daughter wouldn't have to pay for anything Vincent did behind her back." It was perfect. I had a way to legally save Claire from all her debts, without her suspecting that I had the money to do it myself. "Gregory, I want you to start the legal process immediately." "Should I tell your daughter?" "Not yet. I want the process to be completely finished before I say anything. I don't want to give her false hope." "Understood. This will take about 3 weeks, maybe a month." "Perfect." When I hung up, Claire looked at me curiously. "Who was that, Mom?" "A woman asking for Mrs. Henderson, the neighbor down the street. Wrong number." Lying had become easy. With each passing day, I felt more comfortable in this double life I was leading. On one hand, I was the poor, abandoned mother Claire believed me to be. On the other, I was a wealthy woman quietly orchestrating the salvation and education of her daughter. For the next 2 weeks, I watched Claire struggle with decisions she had never had to make before: how to stretch money for food, how to negotiate with creditors, how to find a job when your credit history is in ruins. It was a cruel but necessary education. "Mom, I went to 3 job interviews today," she told me one afternoon, coming home with swollen feet and a tired face. 2 of them told me they couldn't hire me because of the pending legal issues. The third one offered me a part-time job cleaning offices at night. Are you going to take it? I have no choice. It pays very little, but it's better than nothing. And I can work at night, so I can keep looking for something better during the day. Seeing my daughter, who had lived a comfortable life for over 40 years, preparing to clean offices at night broke my heart. But it also filled me with pride. She was finally facing reality without expecting someone else to solve her problems. Are you sure you can handle that much physical work? I'll have to learn. I can't keep being a burden to you, Mom. It's enough that you're letting me live here without paying anything. This is your home, Claire. No, Mom, this is your home. And I'm here because of your generosity, but I'm not going to abuse it forever. One evening, while Claire was at her first cleaning shift, Carol came to visit. She sat with me in the kitchen, sipping tea and looking at the family photos on the walls. Eleanor, I have to ask you something. Did you know Claire was going to come back in this condition? What do you mean? Well, when she left, she seemed so sure of herself, so arrogant. She talked about the great life she was going to have in Europe, how successful Vincent was, and now she comes back completely broken, working as a cleaner, living with you again. Life has a way of teaching us lessons, Carol. Yes, but there's something more. I've been watching Claire these past few days, and she seems different. Not just sad, but humble, as if she's learned something important. Carol had always been very perceptive. What do you think she's learned? I think she's learned the value of the things she took for granted, like having a mother who loves her unconditionally. Perhaps. Eleanor, can I tell you something? When Claire left and treated you so badly, many of us thought you would never forgive her. But here you are, taking care of her again, giving her a home when she has nowhere else to go. She's my daughter, Carol. Yes, but not all mothers would do what you're doing, especially after being treated the way you were. If Carol only knew the whole truth, that I had the power to solve all of Claire's problems, but was choosing to let her suffer a bit longer so she could learn the complete lesson. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? I think you're doing what a good mother would do, but I also think Claire needs to fully understand what she lost when she abandoned you. What do you mean? I think she needs to value you not just as the mother who rescues her when she's in trouble, but as the strong woman who built a stable life for 45 years. She needs to respect you, not just need you. Carol had hit the nail on the head. That was the exact point of my entire plan. I didn't want Claire to come back to me out of desperation. I wanted her to come back out of genuine respect and mature love. And how do you think that can happen? I think it's already happening. I've watched her these past few days. Eleanor, the way she talks to you now is completely different. She's no longer the daughter who gives you orders or treats you like a burden. She's now an adult woman who is genuinely grateful to have a mother like you. That night, when Claire came back from her job, I saw her arrive tired, but with a new dignity. She had earned those few dollars with her own effort, and that meant something to her. How was your first day? Hard, but not as bad as I thought. The other women who worked there helped me a lot. One of them, Carmen, taught me some tricks to clean more efficiently. Carmen? Yes, she's 60 years old and has been cleaning offices for 20 years. She told me she started after her husband left her with 3 young children. She says it's not the job she dreamed of, but it gave her independence and dignity. She sounds like a wise woman. She is. She told me something that made me think a lot. What did she tell you? She said there are 2 types of people who end up doing this job. Those who are there because they never had opportunities, and those who are there because they ruined the opportunities they did have. She asked me which group I was in. And what did you answer? I told her the truth, that I had had all the opportunities in the world, a family that loved me, a stable home, an inheritance, and that I ruined it all by following a man who wasn't worth anything. What did she say? She laughed and said, "Well, honey, at least you know exactly why you're here. That puts you a step ahead of most people." Claire poured herself a glass of water and sat with me at the table. "Mom, I want you to know something. These last few days have been the hardest of my life, but also the most important." Why? Because I finally understand what really matters. It's not the money. It's not living in the most luxurious apartment. It's not impressing people. It's having people who genuinely love you, who are there when everything falls apart. Claire? No, let me finish. You have every right to hate me for what I did to you. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I took everything Dad left you. I treated you like you were a burden. And now here I am again, hoping you'll forgive me and take care of me. I've already forgiven you, dear. But I haven't forgiven myself, and I won't until I prove that I've really changed, that I've learned from my mistakes. Gregory called the next morning. "Eleanor, I have excellent news. The legal process is almost complete. We can free your daughter from all of Vincent's debts. It was time. After weeks of watching Claire struggle, work, and reflect on her mistakes, the moment had finally come to show her that she had never been alone, that someone had always been quietly looking out for her. Gregory, I want you to arrange a meeting. It's time for my daughter to learn the whole truth. Gregory scheduled the meeting for Friday morning at his office. I told Claire I had managed to get an appointment with a lawyer who might be able to help with her legal troubles, but I didn't give her the details. She agreed to come, though she was nervous about the cost. Mom, I don't have money to pay a lawyer. I can barely cover my basic expenses. Don't worry about that now, dear. Let's just hear what he has to say. We arrived at Gregory's office on time. Claire had dressed in her best clothes, which now looked a bit big on her thinner frame. She was nervous, fidgeting with her hands, expecting yet another piece of bad news to add to her endless list of problems. Gregory greeted us with his usual professional smile. Eleanor, Claire, thank you for coming in. Thank you for seeing us, Claire replied. Although I should warn you, my financial situation is very complicated, and I probably can't afford high fees. That's precisely what we're going to talk about, Gregory said, exchanging a look with me. But first, I need you to review these documents. Gregory handed Claire a thick folder. She opened it and began to read, her expression gradually changing from confusion to surprise. I don't understand. These documents say that Vincent forged my signature, that there's evidence of fraud, that I'm not responsible for the debts. That's right. We've been investigating your case for the last few weeks. We found enough evidence to prove you were a victim of identity theft. But how is that possible? Who paid for this investigation? I don't have the money for this. Gregory looked at me. It was my moment. Claire, there's something I need to tell you. What is it, Mom? I took a deep breath. After weeks of acting, I was finally going to reveal the truth. Your father left me more than you knew. Much more. What do you mean? Gregory, show her the other documents. Gregory took out a second folder and handed it to Claire. This time, the documents were the property deeds, the bank statements, the investment certificates, the entire estate Arthur had built in secret. Claire read in silence for several minutes. Her face went through a full range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally, understanding. Mom, this says you own the building where I used to live. Yes. And that you have other properties, bank accounts, investments? Yes. This means that when I sold the shore house, it wasn't my house to sell, and the sale was fraudulent. I've already recovered it. Claire stared at the papers, trying to process the information. How long have you known this? Since the day you called me from the doctor's office. You knew all of this when I came back from Europe asking for help? Yes. You knew you could solve all my problems when you saw me crying every night? Yes. There was a long, tense silence. Claire closed the folders and looked me directly in the eyes. Why, Mom, why did you let me suffer if you could have helped me? This was the question I had been waiting weeks to answer. Because you needed to learn something you couldn't learn any other way. What was that? You needed to learn the value of the things you had lost, the value of family, of respect, of responsibility. When you abandoned me, it wasn't just money you took from me. It was dignity. It was love. It was trust. Claire began to cry, but these weren't the tears of self-pity she had shed for weeks. These were tears of deep understanding. I abandoned you when you needed me most. Yes. I treated you like you were garbage. Yes. And you saved me anyway. Yes, but not in the way you expected. I didn't save you by giving you money to continue making the same mistakes. I saved you by letting you hit rock bottom so you could learn to save yourself. Gregory discreetly interjected. Claire, your mother has paid all the legal expenses to free you from Vincent's debts. She has also recovered all the properties that were fraudulently sold. You are completely free of legal problems. And the cleaning job I got? You can quit if you want to, I said. But I hope you don't. Why? Because that job is teaching you something you never learned when everything was easy. It's teaching you the value of your own effort, the dignity of honest work, the importance of valuing every dollar you earn. Claire wiped her tears and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the look of a daughter who needs her mother, but the look of an adult woman who respects another woman. Do you forgive me, Mom? I forgave you a long time ago, dear. The question is, can you forgive yourself? I don't know if I can. I did unforgivable things. People make mistakes, Claire. What matters is what we do after we recognize those mistakes. Gregory left us alone in his office for a few minutes. Claire and I sat in silence, processing everything that had happened. Mom, I want you to know something. Even if you didn't have all this money, even if you really were the poor widow I thought you were, I would have learned the same lesson. Which lesson is that? That there is nothing more valuable than having someone who loves you unconditionally. For these past few weeks, the only thing that kept me sane was knowing I had a home with you, that no matter how much I had ruined my life, you were still my mother. That will never change, Claire. I know, but I also know that I can never take that love for granted again. I have to earn it every day, with respect, with gratitude, with actions, not just words. We left Gregory's office with a completely new relationship. We were no longer a mother and daughter bound by blood and habit. We were two adult women who had chosen each other after passing the most difficult tests possible. The following weeks were about rebuilding, but not in the way Claire might have expected. Even though she now knew I had enough resources to solve all her problems, she chose to keep her night shift cleaning job. Mom, I need to finish what I started, she told me one afternoon as she was getting ready for work. I can't just go back to a comfortable life as if nothing happened. Are you sure? You don't have to punish yourself forever. It's not a punishment. It's a way of remembering who I was and who I want to be now. I watched her put on her work uniform, something that would have been unthinkable a few months ago when she was living in the luxury apartment with Vincent. But there was something different in her posture, in the way she moved. She was no longer the broken woman who had arrived crying at my door. She was someone who had found dignity in honest work. Carol came to visit that afternoon, as she had every few days since Claire had returned. Eleanor, there are some very strange rumors going around the neighborhood. What kind of rumors? People are saying that you're not as poor as everyone thought. Someone saw Claire leaving a very fancy law firm downtown, and then they saw her paying off all her debts at the bank. People talk, Carol. Yes, but they're also saying you got your shore house back, and that you somehow managed to solve all of Claire's legal problems. That costs a lot of money, Eleanor. Carol knew me too well for me to deceive her for long. What exactly do you want to know? I want to know if my friend of 40 years has been lying to me about her situation. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat across from her. It was time to be honest with someone else. Arthur left me more than anyone knew, Carol. Much more. How much more? Enough that Claire and I will never have to worry about money again. Carol was silent for a moment, processing this information. And why did you pretend to be poor all these months? Because I needed Claire to learn something she couldn't learn any other way. I told her the whole story, Claire's cruel phone call, my plan of silent revenge, the weeks of watching her hit rock bottom, and finally, the revelation in Gregory's office. Eleanor, that is both brilliant and terrible at the same time. Terrible. Yes, because you let your own daughter suffer when you could have helped her immediately, but also brilliant, because I understand why you did it. You really understand? Yes. Claire needed to learn the value of the things she had lost. If you had simply given her money to solve her problems, she would have learned that there's always someone who will bail her out of the consequences of her bad decisions. Exactly. But Eleanor, didn't it hurt you to see her suffer? Every day. Every night I heard her cry. Every morning I saw her get up to go to work tired and defeated. But I knew that if I rescued her too soon, she wouldn't have learned the complete lesson. And you think she's learned it? See for yourself. Claire knows she now has access to enough money to live comfortably, but she chose to keep her job. She knows she can move into a better place, but she decided to stay here with me. She knows she doesn't have to worry about debts, but she's using her own savings to help other women in similar situations. She's helping other women? Yes. She's become friends with the women she works with and is using some of the money she earned cleaning offices to help a coworker who's having trouble paying for her son's daycare. Carol smiled. That's not the Claire who left for Europe. No, it's not. This Claire understands that money is a tool, not a goal. She understands that dignity comes from work and respect, not from material possessions. That night, when Claire came home from work, she found me reading in the living room. Mom, I have to tell you something. What happened? Today, Carmen asked me if I was the daughter of the rich lady from the North End. What did you tell her? I told her yes, that you have enough money that I don't have to work. And you know what she asked me next? What? She asked me why I was still working then. I explained that it's because I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own 2 feet. And you know what she said? What did she say? She laughed and said, Honey, that's the difference between being rich and acting rich. Your mom taught you how to be truly rich. Carmen is very wise. Yes, and she made me understand something important. It's not about the money you have, but about how you use it and how you relate to it. Claire sat with me on the sofa. Mom, I want you to know I've made a decision. What is it? I'm going to keep living here with you, but not as a daughter who moves back in with her parents. I want to stay as an adult woman who chooses to share her life with her mother. What's the difference? The difference is that I'm going to pay my share of the expenses. I'm going to contribute to the upkeep of the house, and I'm going to treat this relationship as a partnership between 2 independent women who love and respect each other. Claire, you don't need to. Yes, I do, Mom. I need our relationship to be different from what it was before. Before, I was a daughter who took her mother's love and care for granted. Now, I want to be an adult woman who values and nurtures the most important relationship in her life. And your job? I'm going to keep working, but not necessarily cleaning offices forever. I want to go to school. I want to prepare myself to do something more meaningful with my life. But I want to do it step by step, earning every opportunity. Do you have any idea what you want to study? Yes, I want to study social work. These past few weeks have taught me how many people are going through difficult situations without anyone to support them. I want to use the resources we have to help other women who are going through what I went through. It was perfect. Claire hadn't just learned to value what she had. She had found a way to use her experience for something constructive. And what about Vincent? Gregory told me he was arrested in France for the fraudulent marriage. He's going to be deported soon. But honestly, Mom, I don't care anymore. That part of my life is over. You don't feel any resentment? No. Vincent did me a favor without knowing it. If he hadn't abandoned and betrayed me, I never would have hit rock bottom. And if I had never hit rock bottom, I never would have learned to truly value what I have. That night, for the first time in months, I went to bed completely at peace. My plan had worked perfectly. Claire had not only learned the lessons she needed to learn, but she had emerged from the experience a stronger, wiser, and more compassionate person. Arthur would have been proud. 6 months later, our life had found a new balance that neither of us could have imagined before. Claire was excelling in her social work studies, and I decided to use some of my resources to establish a foundation to help women in situations of domestic violence and economic abandonment. Mom, the letter from the university came, Claire said one morning, walking into the kitchen with an envelope in her hands. They accepted me into the master's program. That's wonderful. When do you start? Next semester. But Mom, I want you to know I'm going to pay for it with my own savings. I've been putting money aside from my job at the government office where I work now. Claire had gotten a job in social services after getting her certificate, helping families in crisis. The salary wasn't high, but she had learned to live on the essentials and to value every dollar she earned. Are you sure? We can easily afford the master's program. I know, but I need to do this myself. It's part of who I am now. Carol came over for tea that afternoon, as she had every Friday for the past few months. She had become a confidant to both of us, watching our transformation with fascination. Eleanor, I have to confess something, she said as she poured a second cup. At first, I thought you were very cruel to Claire. And what do you think now? Now, I think you were the wisest mother I've ever known. Look at your daughter. Really look at her. It was true. The Claire who was in the living room studying for her exams was completely different from the one who had left for Europe months ago. This Claire had a serenity that came from within, a confidence that was based on her own achievements, not on material possessions. Did you know I saw Claire at the market yesterday buying groceries for a family she's helping through her work? She hadn't told me. And when I asked her why she was using her own money instead of the government budget, she told me that some things can't be measured in official budgets. That night, Claire and I had dinner on the deck, something that had become a tradition. It was our time to talk about the day, plan for the future, and simply enjoy each other's company. Mom, I got a very strange letter today, she said as she cut her salad. From whom? From Vincent. My muscles tensed. Vincent wrote to you? From where? From a prison in France. Apparently he was sentenced to 2 years for marriage fraud. In the letter, he says he regrets everything he did, that he wants to ask for my forgiveness. And how do you feel about that? Honestly, I feel nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not a desire for revenge. It's as if that part of my life happened decades ago, not months. Are you going to write back? No, not because I hate him, but because there's nothing to say. The Claire who married him doesn't exist anymore. This Claire has nothing to say to him. I was impressed by the maturity in her voice. The woman sitting across from me had developed an inner strength that came from having hit rock bottom and picking herself back up. You know what this whole experience taught me, Mom? What's that? That true love isn't the kind that tells you what you want to hear. True love is the kind that teaches you what you need to learn, even when it hurts. That's a hard lesson to learn. Yes, but a necessary one. Vincent told me what I wanted to hear. He made me feel special. He convinced me I deserved a life of luxury without effort. You taught me that true wealth comes from hard work, respect, and genuine relationships. That night, after Claire went to her room to study, I sat alone on the deck, looking at the stars and thinking of Arthur. I had promised him I would take care of our daughter, and I finally felt I had fulfilled that promise in the right way. I hadn't taken care of her by giving her money when she needed it. I had taken care of her by teaching her how to take care of herself. I hadn't saved her by solving her problems. I had saved her by allowing her to learn to solve them on her own. The next day was Sunday, and we had planned to visit the shore house together for the first time since I had recovered it. Claire hadn't wanted to go before, saying she needed time to process everything that had happened. Are you ready? I asked as we got into the car. I think so. The drive was quiet but comfortable. When we arrived, Claire stayed in the car for a moment, looking at the house where we had spent so many family summers. It looks exactly the same, she finally said. Some things don't change, but others do. I'm not the same person who sold this house. We went inside together. The house was clean and tidy, exactly as Arthur and I had kept it for years. Claire walked through each room, touching the furniture, looking at the family photos hanging on the walls. Mom, I want to apologize. You've already apologized, dear. No, I want to apologize specifically for this house. Not just for selling it, but for reducing all our family memories to a business transaction. It's forgiven. This house represents 40 years of family summers, of birthdays, of Christmases. Dad built that deck with his own hands. You planted that garden. I learned to swim on that beach. And I turned it all into cash to finance the adventure of a man who wasn't worth anything. She sat on the sofa where Arthur used to read on Sunday mornings. You know what hurts the most? What? That when I sold it, I felt nothing. It was just another property. Now, being here again, I can feel Dad in every corner. I can hear his laugh, smell his morning coffee, see his reading glasses on the table. He's here, Claire. He's always been here. I know, and I also know he would be proud of how you handled all of this. We spent the whole day at the house, cooking together, cleaning, fixing small things. It was like a ritual of reconnection, not just with the place, but with the values that place represented. As the sun began to set, we sat on the deck that Arthur had built, watching the ocean. Mom, I have a proposal. What is it? I want us to turn this house into a temporary shelter for women leaving situations of domestic violence, a place where they can stay while they rebuild their lives. It was the perfect proposal. Arthur would have loved the idea of his shore house being used to help other families. That's a beautiful idea, dear. We can use some of the foundation's resources to maintain it, and you can oversee the program through your work. Are you sure you want to turn our family refuge into that? Mom, the best refuges are the ones that are shared. Dad always said that a house isn't truly a home until it opens its doors to other people who need love. He was right. Arthur had always been generous with our home, inviting family, friends, and neighbors who needed a place to stay. We returned home that night with a new project and a completely renewed relationship. We were no longer a mother and daughter bound by obligation or need. We were two women who had consciously chosen to build a life together based on love, respect, and a common purpose. That night, before I fell asleep, I spoke to Arthur in silence. We did it, my love. Our daughter finally understands what really matters. And for the first time since his death, I felt him answer me. I always knew you would. You're both stronger than you think. Justice had been served, not as revenge, but as education. Not as punishment, but as transformation. And in the end, we had both gained something far more valuable than money. We had gained an authentic relationship, built on a solid foundation that no future crisis could ever destroy.